But I am glad to see, and talk about a little bit about your point of view on it, the diversity in action. Echo, let's just talk about Echo. It's an amazing representation of indigenous people. It is a legit for the hearing impaired community. She's actually an amputee. I mean, they're just like nailing it on everything possible. It's like we're gonna hammer the disabled. We're gonna talk about the hearing it. We're gonna talk about indigenous. We're gonna bring it all in, and that's not always an easy thing to do, right? Especially like when they're talking about they've kind of changed up where her powers came from. So we're talking about we're going into these flashbacks and seeing indigenous and their belief systems and their all this kind of stuff. That's amazing. So talk about that. Were you excited to jump on board this show because of that? Is it one of the reasons that you really wanted to get on board with that? Talk about the whole experience there.
Yep, 100%. So our representation has been for years and years and years, centuries, not by us and not for us.
Yes.
And I grew up with kids that only knew of the Cleveland Indians Indian and the Redskins Indian, and that's what you look like. That's who you are. Like, that's it.
Right.
And that's not reality. And like for me personally, my projects are very contemporary. Res life or reservation life is both beautiful and dark and nasty at the same time. It's everything. And with Res Dogs, you were able to see some of it in both lights.
Right.
In the projects I'm making, you're going to see a very, very dark side to it, but with humor that comes through, because on my reserve where I come from, it's very dysfunctional, and I will say that. And no one from my community will say otherwise. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, there's beauty to it. Yes. With our culture, our ceremonies and everything, that's beauty. But there is so much dysfunction. But we are a humorous people. Even in the darkest parts of our lives, where we're losing people to drugs, suicide, trauma, all sorts of stuff, we're still able to laugh. We're still laughing. Even at a funeral, we're cracking jokes.
Yeah.
Even when you hear this terrible news, we're cracking jokes. And that's what I personally am making my projects on, because I've had some very dark things happen to me, especially in the last few years. Throughout my life, there's been these checkpoints of I say checkpoints, but like these moments that really have affected my life in the last 5 years heavily, in a very harsh, dark way. Yeah. And it was on me to decide if I'm going, like with the grieving process, if I'm going to stay down there in that pit of just, screw this shit, this sucks, I hate it, or are we going to crack some jokes and let's get up here? And that's where I'm coming from with my project. So if you see Hey Victor, and then also my other script that I wrote that we're pitching to hopefully make this next year, you're going to see the very dark side of our community, but a crazy, hilarious, I don't know what word to use here, but like just in our humor to get through that stuff.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like one of my very close friends passed away 2 years ago, and his brother, who's another good friend of mine, as he's being lowered into the ground, he's looking back, cracking jokes at us. And I'm like, it's not even in the ground yet, and you're cracking jokes. But this is what we do. This is what we do to like get ourselves through. So as far as like Echo and the representation of that, like the cultural aspect and everything, it's so beautiful and so amazing. Me personally, in my personal life with my personal projects, I'm showing like a darker side.
Sure.
Almost like Shameless, like the show Shameless. Like,
I was just about to say,
it's so dysfunctional and dark and crazy at times, but it's hilarious. You're like, no way. That's along the lines, or like the show Fubar, or like Trailer Park Boys, like those really crass, vulgar, humor. Those are the projects that I'm going to be creating.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, because what you're doing is you're bringing a reality to something that, like you said, back in the day, they only know you from sports teams and know your representation from sports team. It's like, no, this is not a cartoon figure. This is our reality, and this is what we are
Mhm.
doing. I think that's so important because, there's so many misinterpretations about different things. Because I know in different communities as well, there are some a little hesitation about like talking about mental health and these type of things. And so to be able to have your process on how you are able to, get through things, there's no right or wrong way to get through some sort of trauma, your friend dying. There's no right or wrong way to get over that or get through that other than your process, whatever you feel is right for your soul, your body to be able to keep moving forward. So I think
Mhm.
that is also amazing to hear because we need more stories like that. We talk about all the time, like we need stories that start conversations because that's how difficult conversations are had. It
Mhm.
definitely makes it a lot easier. We always say the best form of education is through entertainment as well. So to be able to do that with what you're doing, I feel like is absolutely amazing because not enough of these stories are being told. So
Mhm.
thank you for your trial and your effort
Mhm.
to what you're doing to the entertainment space because like you, we are trying to do the same thing as well. We want people to leave the theaters or we want people to be in the living room, talk about these deep, dark subjects. We want people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's just reality of the
Yeah.
Yep.
situation. But man, I'm just like, I don't know. I can feel your energy, like, and it's infectious. It's
Yeah.
got me going. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it. But just like, I mean, when you get in these type of situations, like when you sit down and start writing, you tell what you know, right? Because it feels like you're not even really putting any
Mhm.
thought into this. You're like, I'm gonna write what I know and tell my story. And so is that kind of how it goes,
Mhm.
or are you like, okay, I want to make a film or I want to make a project about indigenous people so I can put that out there?
No, it's never been about that. It's literally it's very personal. A lot of my stuff,
Yeah.
and before I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller.
Mm.
I
Yes.
love telling stories, and I have friends that are writers that are like, you need to write exactly like you speak, exactly like you tell the story.
Right.
Put
Yes.
it down, and people will gravitate towards that. And just how I am constantly with sharing stories, I've put myself in crazy situations and just literally just telling stories of my friends, my families, my uncles, my children, the kids that I've worked with, the experience that I've had or experiences that I've had with in life. I'll share a story and people are like, you could make that, make that, make that, make
Yes.
that. So that's what I'm doing. And for years, I was only getting put out for kind of serious roles.
Yeah.
And people that know me were like, why aren't you going out for like comedic shit? Like, you're hilarious. Like, we love listening to your stories. And I'm like, I'm not getting put out for that. I'm not getting those opportunities. So it's like, well, make your own. And finally I was
Hmm.
like, all right, I will. And I got together with my partner Sam Miller, who I wrote Hey Victor with,
Yeah.
Nice.
and we went up to the cabin in Banff, Canada, and got silly for a week and a half. And I was just pacing back and forth in a onesie, drinking beers and telling stories. And he was like, and we went back and forth and we pumped out the script, and it works. And the same thing with this other project that we're working on. It's an indigenous hockey film,
Hmm.
because hockey's huge here where I come from, especially in the indigenous community. And my experiences both as a coach, as a father, as a mentor, as a community member, and just the crazy things that I've seen and experienced and have seen others experience. We're going to put that in there. So you're going to have it is not a safety project. And I've said that before in other, chats I've had with people.
Hmm.
you, I've had ideas, and I've had friends who have had ideas for projects, and some time goes by and it's like, hey, did you ever get that made? No. Why not? Because I got denied like 3 times. Well, why? Because it doesn't fit into this like criteria of, oh, that's right up our alley with what we want to make. It's not
Right.
all about sometimes healing comes through vulgarness or like a dark path.
Yeah.
It's not all about like, this is who we are as a beautiful people, and this is our culture, and this is all this. Like, no, it's not always about that. I have had friends who have completely stopped trying to make their projects because they've been told no a couple times. But you know what, we're a resilient people, so it will, look how long we've lasted now, and now it's finally coming through where we're, you know, our stories are able to be told by us, where we have allies that are able to help us, and it's not 100% on this other person, non-indigenous people,
Right.
making these things and capitalizing on it, and it's us. And so with that, with my stuff, like I told you guys before, it's my projects are not going to be pretty to some. They're going to offend, they're going to, you know, trigger, and it's fine. But that's real. That is reality where I'm from, like on my
Exactly.
community.